Today on the Chat and Chew Show.
And stuff is like sometimes starts simple.
Yeah, and what I like about that start though is that it's not judgy to be like, hey, I noticed you're not working out like you used to. It's you're holding them up to their own standard.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
saying, I think you look crazy right now. You think you should go see somebody. It's not
That's
that.
that never works.
Right. So I
Never
like
works.
that because it's like they get to just think about themselves and compare themselves to.
Hey, it's Carla, aka Home Cook K, and I recently purchased an ebook full of delicious and flavorful holiday recipes. There was one dish, sweet potato biscuits, that I wanted to give a try. I never had them before, and I love a good biscuit.
Well, hello
Like that's
everybody,
great.
and welcome to the Chat and Chew Show. My name is Betty,
And I'm Roxanne.
and we are so excited that you have joined us. I say all the time that there are tons and tons of podcasts and YouTubers out there, and that the fact that you clicked on Chat and Chew Show, we are so honored to have you as a part of our conversation today. Just so you'll know, the Chat and Chew Show is designed to empower you to do relationships better. And the goal for all of us is to improve in our relationships. Now, I don't want you to think just romantic relationships, because it is not just about that, although that's important. It's about being in relationships with your mailman, being in a relationship with your Uber driver, being in a relationship with your doctor or nurse. Give me some more, Roxy.
With your barber, with your grocery store checkout person.
Yes.
With
Like our producer was talking earlier, be in a relationship with your boss, even know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
So we want to give you some tips and tools and tricks and things you can think about to try to improve your relationship. And so today is going to be a real, real exciting show. We have a special guest that I'm super thrilled to have you all meet. So hang out with us today at the Chat and Chew Show.
Have you ever experienced a time when you couldn't seem to get back into the swing of things? You couldn't quite put your finger on the problem, but you just didn't feel like yourself. That may have been a sign that it's time for a checkup on your mental health. Today we'll chat with Chinomso Nwachuku, who can be described as an uncle, brother, friend, storyteller, and public servant, among other things. As a child in Nigeria, his father, a historian, referenced this African proverb frequently. Until the lion has his or her own storyteller, the hunter will always have the best part of the story. As Chinomso got older, he experienced the healing and therapeutic powers in being the author of his own story. He also experienced the feeling of being deprived of telling that story. These experiences, as well as others, inspired the development of TalkNiger.org, a community developed to destigmatize mental illness within the Nigerian community. His work focuses on mental health and substance abuse treatment and prevention. Get ready, Chat Tribe, for practical tips on managing your mental health.
All right, welcome back. As we mentioned, we have a special guest with us today. We have Chinomso joining us. Chinomso, can you tell us? I'm saying Chinomso. Is it Chinomso or Chinomso?
Chinomso.
Chinomso. I was doing so well, you guys, before we started taping. I promise.
I believe in you.
Chinomso, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you? How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Good.
That's good. That's good.
Can you tell us what got you started in mental health? What prompted?
Sure. So the story goes back to my upbringing in Nigeria. So I was born and raised in Nigeria. We came here in '97. But a few years before we got here, there was a young lady who lived a few doors down from us. And I remember her vividly as this vibrant, beautiful young lady. Then in retrospect, she must have had a psychotic breakdown. And the last image I have of her is how her family kind of turned on her. How they treated her after a diagnosis that they weren't familiar with. You know, she was chained to a tree. They brought her out during the day, chained to a tree. Then during the evening, they'll kind of put her in this very, pretty much like a closet, like dark, no lights, no heat, no bed, no nothing.
Dang.
And you know, and I remember vividly, there's like this sound that she'll make, right? It wasn't words, but it was something like, and that stuck with me. Like that's a cry for help, right? And but no one was coming to her rescue. So then when we got to the US in 97, so just imagine being around all this beautiful chocolate, everyone looks like you, life is good. Then now you're plugged into an area where like now you're the only Black person in your class, right? So that really affected my mental health, and I didn't have the vocabulary for it back then, but in retrospect, what I know now, I was really depressed, right? And I didn't know what to do with that. So because of that, I had to go to HBCU, which is why I went to Lincoln University, the first HBCU in the nation. Google us, YouTube us, whatever you want to do. So I went there for 4 years. So that kind of allowed me to reconnect back with my people. So I thought life was good. I've kind of overcome that first obstacle. Then I go off to graduate school in 2009 for the first time. Then I had this massive emotional breakdown. And University of Chicago reminded me of when I first got to the US. Here I was again as the only Black person in my class, right? And that just kind of, took me back to the point that I had to take a leave of absence from entire year. So at this point, I first encountered a therapist just to kind of say I tried this out, but I wasn't really fully engaged in the process because, that's not what we do. We're taught to be strong and, pray about it and ask Oprah what she thinks we should do, right? But then I fast forward, then I'm getting older, I'm working in my field. And actually I missed this the first time. Then I had another breakdown, which is actually how I kind of met Vanessa and Carl. Like Carl was the head of the internship program I was doing. He kind of saved my life. So I was here again, and a few major life situations. So my dad was diagnosed with cancer. There was a relationship I was in that was failing. Like I have this fancy degree with all these loans and I couldn't get a job. So everything was just kind of, crashing down. And, with the likes of Carl and Vanessa, they really kind of uplifted me and to get me out of that situation. But even at this point, I was pushing back about, even though I'm now I study social work, I'm familiar with mental health, I still thought, well, that didn't apply to me. I'm African, like we don't do that, right? So even up until that point, I was not comfortable with that topic. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm getting older now. I'm getting close to 30. All the elders are telling me, when are you getting married, all that good African stuff. So I started dating this young lady. We're both Nigerians, and she's exposed to the medical field as a nurse and mental health. So I figured, who else to be open with but this person who's exposed? It would be a lot easier to explain to her. So I told her about my struggles with depression and anxiety, and I have to give her credit. She encouraged me to see a psychiatrist. So I saw a psychiatrist, and I got on antidepressant, and things started getting better. But I mean, it's not a cure. It helps you, but you still have challenging days. So another full disclosure. So my oldest sister has a PTSD, bipolar, anorexia, diagnosis from, some childhood traumas that she experienced. So being the person with the MSW in the family, I'm kind of trusted as the conduit, the translator for what she's going through. As educated as my parents were, mental health is not something that they're focused on. So I remember vividly, I'm home. uh, keep an eye on my sister because she has moments when she's extremely suicidal. So we're kind of like all hands on deck. I'm home, and the person I was dating at that point, I sent her an email saying, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling, blah blah blah," and she hit me with that, "Oh, you have to be strong for yourself before you can be strong for other people." I said, "I'm sure I've seen that on a postcard before. I
Right.
get that, right?" Then I thought the conversation was over. Then she continued saying that she's been depressed before, just thought happy thoughts and just kind of snapped out of it.
Wow.
I said, okay, that's also fine, but that's your experience. So me trying to
Yeah.
leave the conversation alone, saying this is not the kind of support I need. This is not working. But for some reason, she continued to then tell me that she think that I enjoyed being depressed,
Wow.
and also that I was not doing enough to not feel depressed, and that whatever happened to me as a young person, I'm an adult now. I should get over it and move on. And at that point, I just really have to thank God that I had the tools and resources that I did. Because if I'm coming to you with information that I've never shared with my family as my support system, and I deliver this news to you, and that's the response I get. If I was in the edge, that's all I needed to fall over. And the reason why I say that, I'm a member of Alpha Phi Training Incorporated, also the first. I like first. HBCU
I'm
first.
seeing.
I love first. If you're in first, you're last. But so this my line brother. He was during his final year of law school, and I remember it was June 2nd is my birthday. He passed on June 9th. So on June 2nd, he actually sent me a text. So like there was no sign that nothing was wrong. He sent me a text. I think June 8th, one of our other line brothers, he drove him to the airport. So there was no signs of anything abnormal. It was just, okay, Rob was, he's has an eccentric personality. Just, Rob being Rob.
Mm.
So June 9th, and I get a text that he's died by suicide. He hung himself, right? So I was just thinking that, imagine if I didn't have those resources. That's all I needed to kind of push me over. So in the whole process of that, I'm like, I can't allow this pain to go to waste, right? I have to kind of use this information to make sure that no one experiences what I experienced, and just to kind of provide that structure. So
Can I ask you a couple questions about
yes,
some of
ma'am,
the
go
things
ahead.
that you said? So it's clear because of your history, you want to go in this direction. It sounds like to help people.
Absolutely.
And you were struggling with it yourself, to also maybe to help yourself. So there's some terms that you use that I want to make sure that our audience is clear with. You said a psychotic break. You said mental illness, and you said a few other terms. So can you just depression was another one that you said. Can you just quickly clarify what is a psychotic break?
Oh, I mean, the psychotic break, the way I see it is, hmm, oh God, the way I see it is, for me, when I had a psychotic break, that how it was for me, it's I was not myself, right? I was doing things that was not consistent with who I was.
So, for example, a psychotic break then is I don't know, I'm not, I don't feel like I'm myself, and I'm not functioning in the world like I'm myself. Is that what you're?
Right. Exactly. Then you can get to the point that where you're completely detached from reality. So in this
I
lady's
see.
case, she lost her ability to work, her ability to speak.
Yeah.
Um, just physically it affected her. So she was no longer able to, lead like a normal life.
Okay.
And that's the most severe
Yeah. Yeah.
spectrum. But in my case, it was like a temporary disruption in my normal day activities. So I
Okay.
wasn't able to eat. I slept through the whole day. You know, extremely sensitive to things that were going on. But you're like you're in a space by like a bubble, like
I see.
and no one else, it seems like you can't get out of that bubble and no one can get to you. That's how I feel.
And then, so depression then would be, what would you say depression is?
Well, I think depression, we kind of throw it around loosely. So there's like a difference between like, I think what the person was that I was talking about was she had a moment of sadness, right? You can be sad then snap out of it. But depression is, duration, how long it lasts, like some of the symptoms of, if you're depressed, most likely you want to isolate. You're not doing activities that you're known to be doing. You stop going to work, you stop eating, you pick up other vices. You may start drinking more, smoking more, sexing more, just doing things that are not consistent with what we know, with people know you to be doing.
So I'm guessing then that it's a spectrum, right? And that, at some point we've been sad or depressed. Now, mental illness is a whole different thing altogether. It feels like mental illness, you tell me if this is right, it can be because something happened to you, or there could be some wiring in your head that's firing incorrectly. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, at least the way I see it is like some type of like, like chemical imbalance in the brain.
Okay.
Which could result in a plethora of issues, either anxiety, depression, just PTSD. And that's mental illness, but I think sometimes we use mental illness and mental health interchangeably. Like we all have mental health. You have one, I have it. Just by the function of living, you have mental health, but not all of us may have a mental illness.
I see.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. This is such a tough topic to deal with, because when you look at your own life, you're like saying, where am I on the spectrum? And I don't know where the people in our audience are today. There might be people who are psychotic break to, feeling really sad today. So we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, if you could give people some things to think about, should they go to a therapist and those kinds of things after we come back from the break.
All right.
Now, a delicious word. Let's chew.
Hey, it's Carla, aka Home Cook K, and I recently purchased an ebook full of delicious and flavorful holiday recipes. There was one dish, sweet potato biscuits, that I wanted to give a try. I never had them before, and I love a good biscuit. Using roasted sweet potatoes adds warmth to these biscuits that are perfect for cold winter nights, or that can be enjoyed in the morning with maple syrup. To start, in a blender, combine 2 cups of mashed roasted sweet potatoes, 1 cup of buttermilk, half a cup of light brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of apple pie spice, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and 2 large eggs. Once blended smooth, set aside. In a separate large bowl, whisk together 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2.5 cups of cake flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Add 16 tablespoons of butter cut into cubes and mix using your hands. The result will be crumbly. Add the blended sweet potato mixture and gently stir. Flour surface and turn the slightly wet dough onto that surface. Using floured hands, gently knead the dough a few times until it holds together and isn't so sticky. Do not overwork the dough. Fold the dough onto itself 3 times and place in a bowl. Cover the bowl and place in the fridge for at least 20 minutes, but no more than an hour. When the dough is done resting, preheat the oven to 475 degrees and place the dough back onto the floured surface and press it down with your hands so it becomes 1 inch thick. Using a biscuit cutter, cut out your biscuits. Place the biscuits on a parchment-lined baking sheet and brush each with melted butter. Bake in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes, remove them from the oven, and you're done. You have a delicious dish that adds a twist to a holiday bread. I made the biscuit dough ahead of time and completed all the steps up until placing in the oven. I did brush them with butter as well and placed them in the freezer on a baking sheet. Once the biscuits were frozen, I placed them in a freezer bag and back into the freezer until I was ready to bake them. If you are freezing them first, I recommend adding another 2 or 3 minutes to the baking time to make sure they're baked all the way. I hope you enjoy.
All right. So if you could think of like three things that you could tell our audience that they should do, like a first step, like if you feel like you're experiencing some type of mental whatever, then here's
Mhm.
the first thing you can do, and then the second, and
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I think the first step is to kind of affirm yourself that if you're having any type of mental challenges, it doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means you're human, right? That's just
Mm.
part of the human experience. Like the example I like to give is like my roommate right now. His dog has a therapist, right? And is on antidepressants. I'm thinking like,
No. What?
I'm like, if a dog can get that kind of care, like why should we be ashamed, right? So I
Yeah.
think, um, the first step is just to say, hey, this is something that I deserve this, right? Then if I mean, there are different paths of therapy and different ways to go about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even without going to therapy, something as important as movement, like some type of movement, exercise, just to
Mm.
either going for a walk for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, right? Just because what you don't want to do is just to be idle. You know what?
Mm.
When you're idle, like all you can do is think, right? So when you're
Mhm.
moving around, you kind of get your mind moving in the right places. So what I do, what something that's also important is that also exposure to sunlight. And a lot of times, just having, and I wake up in the morning, I kind of go out there like the first 10 minutes trying to, get some sun.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that without that, it kind of feels like everything is dark. But with
Mm.
all things, I think those are things you can do on your own. But I do think it's extremely important to seek professional help. And I think because Africans, people of color, we're very religious people. So some of the pushback I get from people is that, well, I don't want to go to a therapist, and that means that my faith in God is not as strong, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I'm being weak, I'm not trusting God enough.
Mhm.
So that's why we have this shirt that says prayer and therapy. You can do
Hmm.
both, right?
Yeah.
You can. It doesn't mean because you're seeing a therapist, it means you're whatever faith you have, you're doing less of that.
Right.
So, and a good therapist actually, their role is to use whatever you consider as strengths in your life
Mm.
to kind of help you through that process. So if you're someone that goes to church frequently, um, or go to Bible study and you're no longer going to that, well, a good therapist, well, what's going on there? Because
Mm.
the function of that community is also good for your mental health, right?
Hmm.
We're social creatures. We're
Yeah.
not meant to be alone in isolation. So I
Yeah.
mean, a
That's
good
just
therapist
like
will, yeah,
that's just like if you're sick, like if you have COVID or something,
yeah,
you're not gonna like, I'm not going to the doctor. You go to the
exactly.
doctor,
I'm gonna pray
and
it out. I'm gonna pray
yeah.
out this ACL sprain.
Right. My
Yeah,
arm is broken. I'm just gonna pray.
yeah. I
No,
mean,
you
you,
go
you can
get
do
it
both.
fixed.
Like it,
Yeah.
it, it just baffles me, like the
Yeah.
pushback on therapy. I'm thinking like, and I asked them like, okay, when you had that ACL sprain, like you didn't sit home and say, God, you gonna take care of this at home, like no, you're gonna have you're gonna do both. You're gonna, as you're going to surgery, you're gonna pray that the surgery is successful, but you're also gonna trust that physical medicine through a doctor to kind of
Yeah.
take care of that
You know,
situation for
honestly, what I think the problem is that people, it's hard to admit things. And so
you.
to admit, I've been sad for 2 months.
Hmm.
I might be depressed, or
Right.
sometimes I feel like I'm having an out of body experience. There
Hmm.
might be something else going on.
Hmm.
Just to admit that is really, really tough. And I think maybe that's why people don't want to seek some help.
I agree. It goes back to the stigma of mental health. So if you have something, you're weak, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we as humans, we crave that external validation, right? No one
Mhm.
wants to be labeled as weak. Everyone wants to be, strong,
Yeah.
self-made, whatever the case may be. But there's actually a lot of strength in knowing where your limit is.
Yeah.
right? To say that, okay, this I'm at my wits end here. I need some help. And that, I mean, that's the beauty of it. If you find value in being vulnerable and, taking care of your mental health, then you will notice that your physical health becomes better. Like you
Yeah.
always saying, your relationships get better
Yeah.
because we ignore those things. We try to use others. Oh, I'm going to buy a new car. That's going to take care of my mental health. But if you're not grounded inside, all that is
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. So I think the first thing you said was practical stuff. I thought was really good. Sunlight,
Hmm.
movement, take
That's
a
it.
walk. And I'm
Yes.
guessing if you feel the way you feel inside and those kind of things for a prolonged period, then maybe it's time now to seek some therapy. Or maybe, I don't know, you tell me, do I go see a therapist whether it's been a week or 2 weeks or
Well, me personally, my philosophy is to be proactive with your mental health.
okay.
Like, don't wait till you crash to go see somebody. I
Okay.
mean, imagine, if life is quote unquote good and you're seeing a therapist, if you hit a bump in the road, like now you have those tools in place. So it's a lot easier for you to bounce back as
Mhm.
opposed to you wait till like you're down. You're gonna get
Yeah.
back up eventually, but
Yeah.
it may just take longer. So even just for like maintenance sake, because I think it's
Yeah.
very, very hard for us to see ourselves objectively, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no one can do that. Like
Mhm.
even Oprah can't do that,
Right.
right? So that's why it's good to have that other lens look at you. So I think,
Good.
I mean, I advocate for therapy as quickly and as soon as you can get it.
Wow,
Yeah,
that
because I
is
was
good.
gonna say some people don't know they have issues. Like it takes a certain amount of self-awareness just to know you're not feeling good. Like, because some
Exactly.
people grow up just being tough, and it's
Mhm.
not even like, do I admit it? It's like, my parents ignore it when they not feeling well. Like we, as a family, this is
Right.
what we do. We fake it
Right.
until we
I'm,
make it.
That's true. I mean, just a real example. Like, I lost my dad this February. So her and my mom, they've been married for 37 plus years, and
Oh, wow.
I know that my mom is going through it. I know, right? It
Yeah.
shows in all things, but her default response, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm okay. Right. So not even willing to have that conversation. Hey, mom, like, let's consider seeing a therapist. I think it'll be helpful. Like, no, I'm good. I don't need that. I'm fine. So it's part of what you were saying. And also just that, I don't know, that there's this perception, like,
Yeah, it is.
I have to be quote unquote this strong Black woman or this strong
Mhm.
African woman, just strong something,
Yeah.
right? Instead of just being a human. Like, this is just part of what life is asking me to do right now. And there's no shame in saying, hey, let me get some help outside of myself in addition to the other stuff that I'm doing.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what do you say to a person who may see it in a family member or friend who can't see it in themselves? Like, how do you even start a conversation that, hey, you might need some help with that? Especially
Yeah.
to men, because Black men or men in general are taught to hide their feelings. So, how do you
Right.
even encourage a man, especially to talk to somebody and be that vulnerable?
I mean, actually, surprisingly, it hasn't been as tough as I thought it would be.
Uh,
When we launched the website, I talked about my experience. So if you see the comments on the page, it's probably like 99% women. Oh, thank you for doing this. But
Mhm.
if you look at my text from my phone, 100% men. Yo, bro, like, I've been
Wow.
going through this all my life. Da 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 da. Right. So I think the first step is kind of to like normalize the conversation around mental health. Right. Um, we have conversations. Just because of that, me and my guys were able to have this kind of conversation. But in terms of like talking to someone who you see something, what I've noticed to be helpful is to kind of like a compare and contrast, like in terms of, okay, like I'm noticing um, that you're doing this differently, right? It also calls for you to be really self-aware and like very, honed in, like, okay, because at that stage, I think you have to present them with like concrete facts, not so much the feeling, but okay, I noticed that, you go to the gym 5 days a week, like you ain't been in the gym in 2 months, like, what's going on? Like, and that kind of stuff. And what I also tell people, if you're trying to, help someone come out that funk, sometimes is you got to remove obstacles, right? If you're having a hard time, I'm saying, hey, like you need to come out the house more and do more stuff. Well, if you're having a hard time, you're struggling to do that. So how do I eliminate an obstacle? Well, I'm coming to pick you up at this time and we're going here, right? So now it's less of a resistance. You can't say, well, Dad, they're coming to get me, so I have to leave with them. So sometimes, depending on how much you care, you really gotta put more into it in the initial phases than, just slowly trying to build back that person to where they were. Then, when they're kind of good enough, then you can start introducing other ways of doing stuff.
Wow, that's good. Wow, I love that you're so practical. This is, yeah. I'm like, Roxanne, let me process.
I mean, sometimes we try to complicate stuff. Sometimes it starts simple. Like,
yeah, and what I like about that start though is that it's not judgy to be like, hey, I noticed you're not working out like you used to. It's you're holding them up to their own standard.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying, I think you look crazy right now. You think you should go see somebody. It's not that.
That never works.
Right.
Never
I
works.
like that because it's like they get to just think about themselves and compare themselves to, what I used to do yesterday. And then actually caring enough to go pick somebody up and go check on them, which, people, even before COVID, I feel like people didn't do that often. It's like go somewhere and see someone because we can do all.
No, we rely on social media. Well, he liked my picture, so he's good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're living their best life because they're responding on social media. Yeah.
Exactly. And you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
He was on Instagram 2 minutes ago, so he's fine.
I mean, because right now, some months I just, go off social media because it's crazy. Then I get all these panic calls from my friends. Yo, bro, you ain't posting in a minute. Like, where you been at?
I know.
I'm like, actually, life is good. I just, so there's more to it. Like we've come to the point that we judge our mental fitness by whether or not you're active on social media.
Wow. Wow. So, Chat and Chew Show, our whole thing is about doing relationships better. And I think, like we're talking today about mental health, one of the stumbling blocks can be that maybe you're experiencing some things and someone else is experiencing some things. So what you gave us, real practical stuff, oh my gosh, that I think is so helpful for people to navigate those relationships. Because if someone is not feeling themselves, you can be there for them to help them, to move further.
Well, this was so good. Thank you so much, Chinomso Nwachuku, guys.
Hey, girl. Yes.
Hey.
So, if you are not already subscribed, please subscribe right now if you're on YouTube, and then press the little bell to get our notifications when we have new episodes. Also, if you're not following us on Instagram, go to @ChatandChewShow and click the follow button. And also scroll through and like a few things. And we'd love to hear from you if you have any questions for us, ideas for topics, and etc. Thanks again for joining us. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Y'all take care.
Yeah.
This show was brought to you by the Chat and Chew Company. Music by Elwood Jones. Lyrics by Roxanne. Bring a Chat and Chew live event to your organization. Contact us at chatandchewshow@gmail.com.